and we're coming at you live from the European SharePoint Conference in Prague. I'm Erica Telly, Office Apps and Services MVP.
Hi, Erica.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, good. So I'm Tony Redmond, another MVP. Random MVP, even.
Excellent. So we were chatting earlier about PowerShell.
Yep.
So why would anybody want to learn PowerShell?
You particularly are an Office 365 admin. Come on, give me some context here. Come on, help me.
Sure. Well, my personal journey, I started out as a SharePoint person, now moving on to compliance, and I found there's a lot of things that you need PowerShell in order to accomplish.
Yep.
So, what else should I know getting started?
Well, that's a great question. I think the thing about PowerShell that you got to remember is that why it exists. Okay, why did Microsoft build it? Originally as a project called Monad, going back 2005, 2006. Its first implementation in a server product in Exchange 2007. The reason why it exists is to automate management operations. So if you look at Office 365, there's a lot of stuff that Microsoft has built in the GUI, but they haven't built everything, and there's a lot of gaps that they leave to be filled. And one way you can fill them is with PowerShell. So that's the reason why it exists. Do it. Everybody should do it.
So what advice do you have for somebody getting started? Like, how can you figure out what it can do, and so that you know even, how to start?
Yeah, we're not helped in Office 365 because PowerShell is a little bit, how would I say it? It's not well joined up. You've got lots of different PowerShell modules and so forth and so on. So if you go and you read PowerShell training material that's out there on the net, there's very little of it that's actually relating to Office 365. There's a lot of stuff that talks about the basics, which is goodness because it teaches you how to deal with commandlets, how to deal with objects, how to deal with the pipeline, etc. But there's very little that actually tells how do you deal with mailboxes, how do you deal with sites, how do you deal with teams and channels, how do you deal with policies, etc., etc. So it's a bit of a voyage of discovery, I'm afraid. There's lots of good blogs out there, but written by various people. And in fact, there's MVPs like Damien Scholes, who's written good books about PowerShell for Office 365. So that's the kind of place I would go looking for. But I think the biggest thing that anybody should do is that they should give it a go. Because there's only one way to learn PowerShell, and that's to actually use it. And if you use it every day and you find something to do every day with it, be it simple stuff like, give me a mailbox report and tell me how much people are using in their mailboxes. That could be one line of script. It could be 10 lines of script. It could be even 200. Depends how complicated you want it to be. But at least you're getting things going. And so that's what I would do. Just do something every day.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
So another thing we were discussing earlier, being the compliance geek that I am, those are the PowerShell commandlets that I've been investigating.
Yep.
And it's pretty fascinating how I need to go through Exchange for everything. That what I'm doing in Exchange with retention policies is then affecting SharePoint. Could you talk a little bit more? I know you have a strong Exchange background.
So I think the reason why a lot of the PowerShell part of this revolves around Exchange is because Exchange essentially is the foundation of the Office 365 substrate. So Exchange was the first workload to bring in compliance and data governance and all the rest of it. It goes back a lot to Exchange 2010. That was the first time we saw things like mailbox retention policies, etc. So what you see today inside the Office 365 data governance framework, which is where all the compliance stuff belongs, a lot of it came from Exchange and has been adapted to deal with different workloads. So you've got OneDrive in there, you've got SharePoint in there, you've got Skype for Business Online in there, and Teams in there. And they've all actually adopted the model that was set down and taken forward over maybe from 2010 to 2013. That's the reason why. It's just historical. And I guess the reason why that is so is that Microsoft looked and they said, hey, this works. Now, if this worked, can we take it forward? Can we apply it to other workloads? And of course, SharePoint was the second large workload, so that was the natural target to go for. And after that, it's just gone to the other ones. And Yammer's going to pick it up next year as well. So
I hope so. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, yeah, the way Yammer will work with retention policies and stuff like that be the same as the way Teams works.
That's great news.
In that you'll get compliance records to be captured into Substrate, stored in Exchange mailboxes, operated on by Exchange mailbox policies, synchronized back to the workload, Yammer, and processed there. So it'll all work. All that PowerShell work that you're doing today to understand the commandlets, it'll all be good with Yammer as well.
Excellent. So any other advice you would, in summary, give to somebody who's just starting out with PowerShell?
If you're just starting, I don't know, have you looked through places like the TechNet Gallery and stuff like that?
That's where I've been getting all my advice.
Yeah, so there, clearly there are some people who are very active in PowerShell for Office 365, so they have blogs. I'd be looking at the blogs that they're writing and finding out the problems they're trying to attack and finding out what they're doing to attack those problems. You will learn something new every day, that is without doubt. Last week I published a blog about how my personal approach to writing sample PowerShell, which is basically show that the thing works and then leave it to professional programmers to get on with it. But one guy, a guy from Poland, he contacted me and he said, hey, I don't like the way that you're doing this. And I'm saying, hey, well, it works, so why don't you like it? He said, oh, well, it'll work for, say, 200 objects. It was about string concatenation, really exciting subject. But he says, you know what, there are people out there who are going to be trying to run this code against 100,000 mailboxes or whatever, and then it'll be really, really, really slow. And that was a great point that I got from the community to say, if you make this little change, then everything will work better. So I got that by putting stuff out there, listening to what people were doing, going to their blog, finding out how they attacked the problem, and just building it into my own little, I don't know, bag of tricks for how I approach PowerShell. And you will find that over time you will accumulate your own bag of tricks. There'll be things that you do time and time and time again. And there's nothing bad in that. If it works, use it.
Well, that is one thing I really enjoy about your blog is you're able to find those hidden gems of information that aren't published anywhere else about how Office 365 works. It's true. Could you let the audience know how to find your blog? I think it's great reading material if you're really interested in how Office 365 works behind the scenes.
Well, I'm not sure that we find stuff that isn't documented or isn't known. I think what we do, the blog, by the way, is office365itpros.com. I think what we do is that we keep our eyes out on what's happening. So we do fairly basic stuff. We look at, for example, the change notifications Microsoft makes in the Office 365 Admin Center to see what they're looking at. We see what they publish in their blogs. And what we try and do is look at it and say, okay, so who's written this blog? It could be somebody that we know, in which case we probably have a higher degree of trust in it. Let's put it like that. It's somebody that we don't know or somebody that works for a particular organization, and we might say, well, you know, that's putting the best possible spin on it. Let's find out. And you just go and kick it around. And if we kick it around, we find stuff that may not work quite as well, and we try and document that. Because it's probably easier for people like the Office 365 for IT Pros team to go and find those lurking landmines and to detonate them than it is for hundreds of thousands of Office 365 admins who don't have the time, interest, or opportunity that we do. So we just do it. I mean, it's second nature now, and it's fun. It really is fun when you report the problem back to Microsoft. They say, "Ooh, fancy that."
That's great. Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining us today for this interview, and have a great rest of the conference.
Okay, thank you. Enjoy Prague. Some great beer downtown.
Looking forward to it.